and the mess they're going through to get stuff put in his name. I mean, something as simple as their cell phone bill.
Mm.
He didn't know who to go through. He didn't know who the service was through. But something so simple took hours and tons of phone calls and personal visits to, the Sprint store to get it all situated out because
My
his name
mom just
wasn't on
went through
anything.
that. Took a while after my dad died just to get the cell phone turned over.
Yeah.
Well, and what people don't realize in different states, if that successor is not on the dealership license, that dealership shuts down. You're legally not allowed to sell a car.
Oh,
Mm.
And then all of a sudden they're stuck. Then if you go to probate, let's say you don't have a will. Well, who's ever running that probate, the attorney, the state collects 10% of the estimated estate value cash.
What?
Yeah. So if you don't have a last will and testament and your family, let's just say they're worth, the average car dealer worth 10, 20 million dollars. Well, what the estate taxes change in 2026 and your exemption is going to be $10 million per couple. Now you're going to owe 40% of anything over $10 million. And if you have life insurance, if you've done the right thing and tried to leave life insurance, and you don't sign it the right way, that becomes a taxable entity. When it's was supposed to be non-taxable to your family, it
Yeah.
actually tacked on top of your estate and now becomes taxable.
Free country, my ass.
you're free to mess up the paperwork.
That's right.
Jesus.
Wow. Not to
Well,
mention just the
there's a lot of
Yeah.
little nuances.
Yeah, that's what me and my wife said for 2023. We're going to put some importance and effort into getting a will brought up and figuring out what to do with finances around that.
Yeah. Well, and what I tell people all the time when I speak to so many people, what a lot of dealership owners think, Mama always thinks it should be fair, or the legal definition is per stirpes, divided equally amongst heirs.
we got 5 seconds, guys. We'll get cut off here for a moment.
Yep.
So hello everybody.
What's happening?
If you haven't
Hello.
jumped right into what happens if something bad goes on in life.
That never
Yeah, it's gonna
happens.
be one of those shows.
Right. Grab your popcorn. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, Mark, at least you're sitting down at the beach today.
Yes. Little quick visit down to the beaches of Florida. Little
Oh,
bit,
nice.
just get out of Birmingham for a while. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, when you're not playing on the beaches of Florida, you're having all kinds of wonderful conversations with car dealers, right?
Yes, sir. You know what we do is we go in and we ask them a bunch of questions they're just ready to answer. They feel really happy about it. You know,
Yeah. What happens if you die? Let's start
that's
with
right.
that little.
But
Yeah.
you know, that's what I tell people when we first talk. We get up on stage and we have this presentation. When listen, man, you're going to have a really good time today. It's really hard to make death, taxes, and your demise to be humorous, right? So that's really what we do. We go. We've kind of taken it to be our mission to help automobile dealers who are some of the nicest, uh, big-hearted, friendliest people in the world who make a lot of money, but they just don't know how to protect the money. They know how to spend it, uh, and build a great business, but they don't know. We ask the question, what would happen to you? What would happen to the dealership if something happened to you? What happens? Would mama know? Would the kids? Would someone know? And what's the negative repercussions if you don't do anything? And so, Alex, that's kind of what I was telling you. One way or another, you're going to sell this business to an insider. That's a son, daughter, niece, or nephew. You're going to sell it to an outsider. That's somebody from out there who wants to come purchase your book of business or your business, the lot, everything. Or you're going to die at your desk. One of those three
Yep.
things are going to happen. The state in which you live, if you don't have a will, let's say you just don't have anything written down, you just never got to it. That state in which you live, they have a will for you. It's just not what you wanted to have happen. They're going to execute their wishes on your family and on your money instead of you executing the wishes of your family and your money.
Now, I would think this isn't just with car dealerships. I would think a lot of small businesses to medium businesses that are, family owned or individually owned probably go through this exact same scenario, not just car dealerships, correct?
Most certainly. The reason we focused, well, I'll tell you what, we stumbled into focusing on car dealerships. It wasn't with an intent.
Okay.
Isn't that how
my
everyone
best-
gets in this industry?
Yeah, really.
My best friend in the world is a car dealer, an independent car dealer, very influential in the state of Alabama, president. He served on the national committee. He asked us one year to come down and be a vendor. I think they were just trying to raise money from vendors, right, to go fill up spots. And I said, yeah, sure. So down at that event, my wife actually starts to speak to this guy off to the side, and I just left him alone. My wife could make friends in a paper sack by herself and just talk. So she's over there and talking to him, and lo and behold, it is the national president for the NIADA. And he comes over and says, hey, what do you do? I said, oh, I do estate planning for families. We just kind of help people walk through some stuff. He's like, why don't you come out to my house and see if you can help my wife and I. So I did that. Took 4 trips. He lived a good ways from me. Helped them design a last will and testament. Looked over everything they do. Everything with a dollar bill, right? How they were taxed. What's their last will and testament look like? Their financial directives. Their healthcare directives. Everything that they did. And at the end of it, he said, I already had all this done. He said, I was really vetting you to see what you come back with and everything else that you did with it. And he said, I paid $40,000 for this to be done. And he said, you just did it at no cost. And you verified everything that I got done. I said, okay. Literally.
You're like, I didn't send you the bill yet.
That's right. 1 month later, he has me on stage at an NIADA event as one of the guest speakers, speaking on what I did for him and how to do it. And, to me, it's just a blessing. From that point forward, now, fast forward 6 years later, we have just over 1,000 clients who are independent auto dealer clients on my team who we work with. So it spreads quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in some sense, you got your money's worth visiting his house, right?
A little bit. Yeah. Yes. So, and when, like you said, it could go to a small business owner. So we got into the automobile world just because of the magnitude of wealth that they have and the help that they need. And Henry's best friend was a gentleman named Billy Graham, who was a dealer in Georgia. And I do believe he was in his early 50s. He passed away and he didn't have a will. He didn't have any legal description on what to do with his thriving car lot. And therefore, his wife didn't know what to do. His family didn't know what to do. They spent, and he don't mind me telling because he's told it on my behalf. They spent the better part of the next 3 years in court trying
Wow.
to, yeah, trying to remain solvent, and it ended up not being solvent. Um, so that's one of the first things we do when we walk in. One, no car dealer wants to deal with us. No business owner wants to deal with it. It's just something he doesn't want to deal with. They want to make money, buy cars, rinse and repeat it, and sell cars as many times as they can in a 6-day period.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of our promise is, listen, if you'll isolate an hour from me, let us come in, isolate it for an hour. What happens to this business if something happens to you? Do you have other children? Is one child in the business? Is one child not in the business? That's probably one of the biggest things we deal with is it's called estate equalization. Most of the time, mama wants everything to go equally. And therefore,
Of course.
hey, the dealership goes to a third, or a half. And I try to tell people all the time, going, listen, fair is not
That's
equal.
got to be a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, man. Fair is not equal. And you can't get two people to agree to where to go to dinner, let alone what you're going to do for a $20 million, car lot. Because the thing is, what they want and need out of life are two totally different things. You may have someone who's on the verge of bankruptcy, or their wife or their husband wants the money. We're selling everything. Then you got the guy in the dealership or the daughter in the dealership who's, no, this is a long-term gain for us, and we're going to make a lot of money doing it. Well, if it's not written down, then that goes through the court system, and then the court defines what actually happens, which most of the time is liquidation.
Really? That's sad. That would be really sad.
It is. I could tell you stories that you wouldn't believe of having to go through a lot of this with people when someone passes.
Well, let's
Especially
not
if
jump
it's
into that just yet.
Yeah.
So one of the things that really interested me when we were talking about having a show about succession planning was just the timing. So my grandfather died not too long ago, and my uncle took over the Checkered Flag Automotive Group where I come from, and he brought in a team of succession planners, and they went through and were looking at the whole bench and looking at the family, looking at everything. And it generated a lot of curiosity from the staff. So they were being asked questions that you just don't get asked on a usual basis. You're trying to just say, okay, who might be next for the executive management team, who might be next for running this store and that kind of thing. And they're just trying to dive into like personalities and all kinds of things, and it just gets the minds churning, like
Yes.
in a really big way. So have you seen how some of these things go in that regard for the employees of the
Yeah.
dealership? And
Yeah. What's the reason for asking the employees?
Well, the one thing that I would do is, Alex, as we've talked about a little bit, when you're left to your own thoughts, all kinds of stuff creep in, and most of it's not positive. So what I would do as a business owner, if you're in this situation, I don't care how old you are, if you're 50 years old and own a dealership, or if you're 80 years old and own a dealership, there should be a path of training and a path you need to be having those conversations. The conversation is the key to calmness, even in a family organization. If you're not, even within your own family, if you're not having conversations with your kids or about anything, they're left on their own. That's a horrible place to be, because the mind is a little crazy. But when it comes to a multi-million-dollar dealership, what I would be doing, even at the ripe old age of 50, is training someone. Have that person, if it's not a son, daughter, niece, or nephew, if it's not a lineal descendant, it is another guy who's been there, who's been in the trenches with you. Take that person if you have meetings with the bank, if you have meetings with the accountant, if you have meetings with GM or whoever that is, bring that person along so they're aware of the conversation. They're aware of what's being said, how it's being said, wishes that are being made. That way, if something does happen, the bank has facial recognition of this person already. The
Mm,
account has the awareness of this person already. You're not interjecting something cold into warm water.
That's
makes
good
sense.
advice.
Yeah, that's never thought about that.
Yeah, some companies, dealerships operate off of floor plans. Well, those floor plans are held, by entities.
Yep.
What I tell people to do, listen, if you don't want to get off, if you want to get off a floor plan, which would be great. Sorry if there's any floor plan people watching here, but that's not the best way to do it. And you start to either deal with a bank or you deal with cash or stuff like that. You need to make sure that there is a secondary person with you almost at all times. When you start operating inside of a silo, it becomes very dangerous. Because if something happens to you, now no one else is left in that silo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would also, just all the different twists and turns that it would take, especially if someone passed away, to be able to step into those shoes. Not
Right.
only would you have to, it had to obviously it had to be someone that you have a lot of trust for.
Well, what I would like to see done initially when we get in, I spoke to a gentleman yesterday, very young, but very successful in the business. He was 25. His business partner was 28. Well, the business partner just got married. I said, okay, do you guys have buy sells? No, we don't have buy sell.
It's
Okay.
what?
Let me guess, you really do. Because if something happens to him, you're in business with his wife.
Oh,
No, no,
yeah.
not. Yes, you are. And so we just kind of immediately jump in and go, okay, on the checking account, who signs on the checking account? Oh, that's what I do. He buys the cars. Oh, but he doesn't have access to he can't sign on this? No, that's not his role. Okay, well, all the money, if something happens to you, he can't touch it. And so we go through, I really try to step in and go, man, make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. And it seems like I have one gentleman, he's probably one of my best friends, 82 years old, a massive dealer. And he and I just struck a friendship and I did all of his stuff for him. And he even told me, he said, when I signed this last one testament, I feel like I'm signing my death certificate. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get it, right? But it's signed now, it's done. And even someone who's young, I would tell you, planning is much more efficient than a reaction.
Oh, yeah.
Right. If you plan to go do something, you can take advantage of all kinds of nuances and learning stuff. But if you get into a car accident and now you're reactionary, that is very expensive. So that's kind of what we base all of our conversations on. Just try to plan some stuff and not try to react to a whole lot.
Well, and it puts, whoever would potentially be in charge, it really puts them in a tough spot. It's
Oh,
it's
very.
got to be a time suck. Like I was sharing with you earlier, with my parents' neighbors, and the one passing away before they expected, and you know, the wife had she had control over everything,
Yeah.
and he passes away or she passes away, and something as simple as the phone bill, trying to get that straightened out. But my point of bringing that up was just the time involved. And my dad has been by his side for countless of hours just to get some of the most simplistic things accomplished.
Yeah.
What a burden to put on your wife or your partner or whatever, it, and not even knowing where to start. God, that's a scary situation.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
that
and
happens even outside of business ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
to your
Yeah.
point,
Well,
Jeff, like
yep. Yeah.
that all of us could go through that.
Yeah.
What have there been any like recent changes in the market that's maybe changed the way dealerships are viewing their business?
The biggest thing is coming. Um, for your average American, and most people don't ever think about this, right? Most wealthy people don't want to realize that they're wealthy. Really, a lot of dudes, are overalls and jeans, and it's the epitome of the millionaire next door. You would never know. I couldn't begin to tell you how many times I sit down. I call it a fact finder or a data gathering, and I figure out what they have. Right, here's how much do you own, who owns it, what's your liabilities, what's your negative. Let's see all this stuff. You'd never realize how much they own. Here's one of the biggest things coming like a freight train towards anyone who's of wealth. Right now, you have an estate tax limitation for every family. If you have a will and your wife has a will, you're married, you get $12.6 million per person. Okay. So that's give or take, 20, 24, $25 million of exemption. In January of 2026, that exemption is going down to 5 million a person. And they're trying to cement it there. That's already done. It's not going to be voted on. It's not going to be, that was part of the deal whenever Trump was in there. That was part of his negotiations. And it's going to get locked in. So now, if you are worth more than $10 million, and that means cash, vehicles, lot, all your assets, most car dealers are worth more than $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you own life insurance that you signed, it's on your body and you own it. Let's say it's $3 million because you wanted to take care of your wife if something happened. Now you're worth $13 million.
Oh, so that
Because
gets compounded on it.
now it's going to become taxable. And what it's going to be taxable at is 40% over $10 million.
Whew.
You want to, and that's payable 9 months in cash after second passing. No discussion.
They should deduct the inflation from here till then too.
Right. So that's one of the biggest things we do, is we go through and go, listen, there's only 3 people who are going to get your money. If you're worth $20 million, $30 million, I bet you my average client is probably worth $20 to $30 million.
Okay.
At the end of the day, either you are giving your money to your kids, you're giving it to a charity, or you're giving it to the government. There is no other place to give it. And so what we do is we sit down, not necessarily we, just, it's a good planning. Do you want to gift part of your dealership? Do you want to gift some houses, gift some cash? You can start to gift that on an annual basis to minimize that taxation that you're passing. Do you want to have, maybe you need the money. Maybe you're worth all that money, but we refer to a PhD. Papa had a dealership.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the kids, have the dealership. And one of the things I tell people in the seminar, how many of you are second generation? Good bit raise their hands. How many of you are going to pass it to the third generation? And those same people typically raise their hands. Okay. Do you want to count on your kids to fund your retirement? And laughter typically breaks out over the room. The work nowadays, no offense to anybody who's listening, but nowadays the work ethic is different. What if they run it into the ground? And so all the work that you've done may go for naught. So what we try to do is a long answer to a short question. We try to say, okay, do we gift this to some of the kids? Do we create a financial vehicle that dad or mom funds for themselves and then let the kids take over, but their retirement's already set up and they can kind of wash their hands and go to the beach or go wherever they want to go. And they don't have to worry about if little Johnny runs it into the ground and that's his retirement. That's not theirs. So
What about like trusts or moving money offshore?
yes, independent auto dealers, they have a reinsurance component where you can set up a trust inside of Turks and Caicos or Delaware. The money is always domiciled in the U.S., but the entity can be structured outside. There's reinsurance companies who do that. I think even new car dealerships do reinsurance companies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fantastic place to shelf money. If you're worried about maybe the next generation of divorce, hey, I want to give this down, but I don't want her to get it, or anybody, maybe they're not even married yet, then you can put it inside of a trust. The only thing that becomes hairy with that, and we tell people be very careful when you do a trust. Quick example, if Junior gets married and his assets from that company are going into his checking account, then he writes a checking account to the trust. You're now commingling funds, and she's entitled to everything.
Wow.
So you have to, what we teach people to do is, I have an attorney on staff. I have an estate attorney. I don't do this. I've just been with her so much that I hear her, and she would set up a trust, set up your own checking account that's in your name, and the money kind of stays circular outside of any joint assets. That way you're never commingling funds. A little more complicated, but there's a lot of benefit to it.
Right.
It all seems very complicated.
You know what? It is to someone who doesn't do it every day. But for us, it's just what we do every day. I couldn't begin to tell you.
Yeah.
I've walked into car dealers, a lot of my clients, they have 15 screens up, right? And they're bidding on this car over here. And I'm like, what are you doing? That to me seems overwhelming. And I couldn't do that in my life, but they know what they're doing. They know where the bids run and they do it all. And, I've been in the lanes with people, some of my buddies, and all of a sudden they're walking by going, oh, we just bought that. I'm like, I never saw you move. Right.
That's how it's done nowadays.
So yeah, this seems complicated. It's actually not. It's very simple if you can sit down and just dedicate some time to do it. And really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is, in my opinion, I think you're trying to honor all that's been bestowed upon you, and in the most blessed way possible, pass it to the next generation. You don't want to make them degenerates, oh, we're multimillionaires and we're just going to go do nothing. But, what I tell people all the time is everyone's thrown that pebble in the pond. As a little kid, you've tossed a pebble and it's in the ripples of the pond go out. Yeah. Every car dealer is that pebble. And the more you're worth, the bigger your pond is, the more generations you can affect, the more ripples you have that you could affect positively. But if you choose to do nothing, if you just sit on the shore, well, you can negatively affect your family for generations as well, with taxes and litigation and court. And man, you've done all this hard work. My goodness, you've grinded to build this dealership. And you've grinded to buy all these rental houses and these beach houses and these commercial properties. I told one buddy, I said, listen, man, if you don't do anything, because he just had his foot in the sand, I'm not doing anything. Okay. How much did you pay for that rental property? Oh, $1 million. Well, they're going to owe 40% of that to the government. So they're going to have to fire sale that. You ain't getting $1 million. They may get 500,000. So you just lost $500,000. Some people say, I'll be in the dirt. I don't care. Those aren't my clients.
No,
Those are,
I wouldn't. No,
you
that's
know,
that's messed
I
up.
care more about your family than you do. So we so, but most people understand that and go, man, I don't want to do one. I'm not going to waste my time buying all these things if I can't pass it down to someone, you know, even a charity, do something even for a charity.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the best industries I've ever seen. I've worked with a lot of physicians in my life, doing estate planning, a lot of high net worth people. I've never met a group of people who are more uh, charitably inclined than car dealers
Hmm.
ever. Um,
That that
I
doesn't
help a lot
surprise
with
me.
man. It's unbelievable, man. I help with Make a Wish, and they're donating cards, man. They're donating stuff. It's just your average person just doesn't do that, and so kind of it gives me hope whenever I work with people. Going, man, let's help out the next generation and not have to
Hmm.
liquidate some of your hard work.
Yeah, dealerships always get a bad rap just because of the industry. But the reality
Yes,
is, your family-owned dealerships throughout town, they contribute more to the community than what most people realize.
you better believe it, man. With little Johnny's baseball team or the
Yeah.
gymnastics, whatever, man. They're normally the first hit up, and they never say no that I know of.
You walk into
Do you see a lot?
any
Do you?
place, any city, and look at the plaques of who donated. If you
Yep.
know the names of the families, there's
Yeah.
always car dealers. Always.
Hmm.
Yep. Jeff, what were you thinking?
Yep. Sorry, Joe.
Oh, Alex is always cutting me off. I forget what my question was. It was something about with. Oh, how are you seeing, or what's the trend? Are you seeing a lot of dealership owners handing down to their family, or to their kids? Are you seeing more of that, less of that?
Probably here's what I encourage people. Uh, it doesn't always happen this way, but my encouragement, because what I try to tell people is, listen, this is your one shot at retirement. You don't get a dress rehearsal. This is the only time you're ever going through this. I've gone through it 1,000 times. So listen to my counsel. I'm very careful never to tell a car dealer what to do because they're drivers. And if you ever tell,
Yeah,
no
they don't
pun
like
intended,
that.
yeah, they don't like that. So you just kind of, here's some options. Here's option 1, 2, and 3. What I tell people, listen, there was a grind to get here. You probably were broke at some point. You probably learned how to pinch a dollar really good. You didn't always have this mega wealth that you have. I would gift a certain percentage. And here's the only reason why. If you want to, let's say, your son or daughter's in the dealership and they don't own anything. Well, now they can't take advantage of some tax breaks of having K1 distributions or owner distributions. And so let's gift them up to 10%. Now they're eligible to get some different tax breaks through the accounting system. Now, let's make it to where there's some sweat equity involved. I know you may have enough to retire on, but let's make sure that he or she starts to purchase you out of the dealership. I think when anyone is gifted anything, maybe they take it for granted or they don't treat it as nicely.
Hmm.
Um, and that goes with anything, I think, in life, a house, a car, whatever.
For
I think
sure.
there
Yeah.
has to be some sort of sweat equity. So you may get a couple guys that say, listen, I'm just going to gift it to him. I'm just going to let him have it. I got plenty. I got money sitting back here. If he runs it in the ground, he runs it in the ground. I just don't care. And that's fine. We figure that out and have it happen. What majority I see people do is we gift a certain percentage, then they actually earn a certain percentage over time. And what we do is we develop a spreadsheet for them that says, hey, we're going to gift 10% here. Now you're going to buy 5%, 5%, 10%, 20% based on the premise of, hey, Junior, normally the kid, I can make this better than what dad makes it. And sometimes they're right. I see that, the growth.
Mhm.
And so the dad is based on this spreadsheet, he thinks he's going to grow the business 10, 15, 20%. He's going to take those earnings and he's going to give them to you. So his income is not going to go up. We're going to take those earnings and we're going to make him take those and give them to you as a part of the buyout for your sweat equity for the last 40 years.
Okay. I like
And I've
that.
seen that plans like that have gone on to non-blood. There's been some
Yeah.
stories in the Hampton Roads area where there's been some people where the kids just had no interest in the business, but there was a GM or a vice president or somebody who was just really strong, and the owner saw the
I don't know if you can
value
hear me,
in
but I froze up.
keeping the bricks going and keeping the business alive. Yeah, you sput out there for a minute, Mark, but
Yeah,
looks like you're
I
back.
think I'm back. Yeah.
You got the beach Wi-Fi's going today. We get it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm operating off a hotspot of the phone, so I apologize.
So, question for you. The Jeff was asking a little bit about the recent market changes and if they've changed the mindsets of some dealers where maybe you've gone into planning, you've helped them realize, hey, I've got more wealth than I ever knew. And maybe it changed their mentality entirely towards the future of the business. Does that ever happen?
Not tremendously. I think most business owners are drivers, or 99% of business owners are drivers. And a lot of what I've learned through this is a lot of car dealers aren't necessarily car lovers. They're businessmen who know how to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what a lot of guys do. So when it looks to devaluing their business or giving away because of the state of the economy, they're not into that. It's really pretty much like a blue chip stock, right? They know if they hang on to it long enough that the value is going to come back. Now, what I do see happening now is because of the chips and because of just all the BS that's going on all over the place. They don't want to go out and spend a ton of money buying cars because they're afraid the market's going to flip and they've overpaid for their inventory that they'll never get out.
That's happening right now.
Yes. And the really successful dealers, I'm talking the high-end guys who make money, their response always to me is, because I asked them that question, if I don't buy anything, I guarantee you I know how many I'm going to sell. And so they keep buying. And they're like, we're big enough. If we take a loss on a couple cars, we're okay. We've made enough money over the time. If we have to sit on a few cars or auction them, it doesn't matter to them. It's the smaller guys right now who are closing at more of a rapid rate.
Yeah.
Who are maybe in a lower socioeconomic area, for maybe new car dealerships or even high end. Maybe their target market or their price point is, $15,000 to $25,000. Those dealerships are closing at a quicker rate because
Really?
new car dealerships are going out and really offering incentives to capture those high-end used cars and put them back on their lot. So whereas maybe the independent small guy, he's out of market, he can't get that. And then he's overpaying for it on top of it.
Yep.
So what you're saying, you have seen quite a few small dealerships have been closing up.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
That's sad to hear.
And a couple things, if they have a good, not necessarily name recognition because they're small, but if they have a good lot, I do see bigger boys go in and say, "Hey, we'll take that off your hand.
Yeah.
Let's capture some of your losses, and either stay on here as the face and kind of run this thing, but we're going to buy it and we're going to populate it with our cars."
Hadn't heard that. That's an interesting one. Keeping
Yeah,
them around, and putting their own
yeah, because
inventories on there.
most of the time their problem, it has nothing to do with personality or sales. It has to do with capital.
Yep.
They don't have the capital, and then when you go to the bank right now, the bank doesn't want to lend to a used car dealer. They just don't. And if you really go to a company, I'm not a big advocate of getting in debt with floor plan companies. I think you read the fine print, and some say 6 and 7, but at the end of the day, it's 11 or 12. That's a hard nut to crack and stay in front of at all times.
Yeah, we do want to throw a little bit of a positive out for floor plans from the when you are able to get your hands on a lot of capital. So typically franchise dealers. Doing the floor plan can bring benefits, especially if you do it with the manufacturer that you work with.
Yes.
Yeah. Or
Well,
run it through the
usually
bank.
manufacturers
And
work with, yeah,
Yeah,
because they have a
sometimes
vested interest to keep you alive.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then they'll give you all sorts of incentives for
that's right.
financing, and
yeah, you can get
Yeah,
some
sorry,
financial
sorry.
breaks doing that.
I apologize. I was isolating there to just independent dealers, and floor
it's all right.
planning there. When you're an independent dealer, can be a crippling aspect.
Yeah, can definitely see
Makes
that.
sense.
Definitely
Sense.
see that. So, in the succession planning, let's say more with some of your larger clients, how often does it branch out beyond the family and and the owner's assets and gets into like people who are in the stores?
That's a great question. Um, Not often, to be honest with you, not often. It's and I know this sounds weird, and I've kind of tried to get into the mindset of the owner's brain when he does this, and it goes back to trust. I think it goes back to just their family and the grind that he put in. He wants to see his son, daughter, niece, or nephew take that over.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't, he would rather see it shut down.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a whole lot. I think there is willingness. I'm thinking of one specifically. There's willingness to do it, and this guy's name is the dealership. Like his last name is the dealership, and I think he is hesitating greatly to pass it along under his name. And I think that's just with lineage, with reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes a long way. I think if he did that, I think he'd make the guy go get a new EIN number, probably get a new name, new everything. And then you lose everything that the guy's buying. You're buying his name. So I don't see a whole lot of that. That's a great question. I never really thought about it, but I can think of one, that he really wants to buy it. He's a GM who's been there 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not young, but he's not old either. And he's like, "Hey, this thing's rocking." And
What age
the
is
other guy,
that out of the just out of curiosity?
what's
When you're
that?
not old and you're not young either. How old is
that's
that?
our that's our age, Alex.
Hey,
Oh.
I mean, yeah, that's right. I am. Uh-oh. Hey, I'm 52, so anyone from 70 to 50, I think is young now. It's amazing how that changes with age, isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah,
It
no.
sure does.
Yes, we. I remember back. I went to. I remember a 40th birthday party of either my uncle or my aunt. But I just remember them turning 40, and I'm thinking, man, you're ancient. You're about to die. And I'm just this little teenager, and now you're 52, and you're like, I've got the majority of my life in front of me.
There was we had a staff meeting this morning, and one of the people was saying, "Yeah, it was this really old guy. He was finally getting it." And he's like, somebody said, "How old was he?" He was like, "Oh, he was 64." I was like, That doesn't sound that old to me.
Yes.
No.
So this, like I said, it's a great thing to be a part of. I firsthand get to help families have peace,
Yeah.
and it's maybe the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Um, and I met. This is sad, but it's sad and it's also happy. No joke. When 2 weeks ago, I had a lady call me and say, "Hey, my husband died," and all he said was, "If something happens to me, call you." I was like, "Okay." One, that's a great honor. I mean, man, if that's
Yeah.
just a unbelievable honor. I said, she had no idea of anything. Now, he was not a car dealer. She was a client. He was a client 15 years, there. But she comes down to the office and she's in tears, right? She just lost her husband and she has a house payment, has all this other stuff going on. And I said, "Hey, just so you know, we're going to send off and we're going to, here in about a week, you're going to get a check for a couple $1,000,000 because he chose to take care of you through some different financial vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
You're debt free. And not only are you debt free, you can stay in your house and now you can live the rest of your life in absolute comfort."
That's
And
awesome.
that's kind of a joy, and it's a morbid way to look at it, I guess. But I always tell people, when we're kind of concluding our talks, you never want to be broke and sad at the same time. That will lead to very bad decisions. You're right. You,
Yes, it does.
you can be
Yeah.
sad, just don't be broke. Um, and so you've got to do some planning in order to achieve that. But if you can achieve it, you can really help, you know, one, just calm yourself down, but then also help your family. And that's the end of the day. That's really what you want is you want some peace. If you truly love your family, that's the way to achieve some peace, some financial peace amongst yourself, among the living, and then also when you pass. Chris, I appreciate the big facts. Yes.
I know. I think my next phone call is going to be to the estate planner. It's time.
Well, and I tell people this, listen, I don't care who you go to, don't go to a tax attorney or a litigation attorney to do your estate planning. Don't do that. That's a mistake. They're educated people. They have law degrees, but every attorney specializes in different areas of the field. Go to someone who knows what they're talking about. And what we try to counsel people in a dealer's life or in a small business life, you have silos. You have an accountant, a an attorney, a life insurance guy, maybe a financial guy. They're all operating in their individual silos, but they never communicate with each other. So therefore, someone who's operating in their silo may be making a great decision for you, but it's counterintuitive of the other person who's operating in their silo, thinking they're making a great decision for you. Find someone. This is how we've kind of got in this market and have stayed here with such growth. We actually have meetings that go, "I need, with your permission, to talk to your CPA, to your attorney, to your investment guy, and we're all going to be able to talk together. Here's what we're thinking about doing. What do you think? What do you think? And what do you think?" Because the last thing you want to do at the end of the day, when you're sitting there at 70 some years old and you've done all this planning, the last thing you want to say is, "Oh shit, I wish I would have known that," because you can't do anything about it at that time.
Nope.
Well, speaking of age, to get back on that topic, so and what when is a good time to really start doing this and getting your estate figured out?
Yeah. Well, like I
The moment
said,
you have a shit ton of money.
Well, no,
yeah,
does it matter? Like you might not even
no,
realize you've got assets that are of
I would do
value.
it young. The reason I would do it young, like I said, I met with these guys last week who are 25 and 28. and man, they're starting to make money. He heard me in Las Vegas earlier in the year, and he's like, "Hey, I just now I'm getting to you. I'd like to set up some planning." Because here's what most dealers, most business people, they're operating inside of a microscope. And so they're looking right here at this little period of time. What I would encourage you to do, whether you're 25, 35, 45, start to look in a telescope. If you can start to plan out here, the likelihood of you achieving those goals is tremendously more than reacting to whatever thoughts you may have. So it doesn't really matter if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, heck, and if you haven't done anything and you're in your 60s or 70s, man, do it. Do something. Get something written down, because the state in which you live has a plan for you. It's just not your plan. I mean, I'm a big golfer. I play golf a lot back in my hometown. And we're on the fifth hole a month ago, and I have a buddy of mine who's 52 years old, for those who don't think that's old. And he's on the fifth tee, and he looks up and he goes, "Oh man, I don't feel good," and fell over.
No way.
Done. Beside us. And we had a doctor in our group, rolled him over and beat the ever living stew out of him for, I think we looked back on it, was 17 minutes till the ambulance got there.
Holy shit.
And they brought him back. He was flatline dead.
Wow.
And brought him back. And I asked him, afterwards, a couple weeks afterwards, "Hey, do you have a last will testament? This guy's worth a lot of money. Do you have this stuff taken care of?" He said, "No."
Oh my
You got
God.
2 little girls, a wife. I said, "Man, so of course he's getting it taken care of now, but don't think that can't happen to you." I know that's a morbid conversation to have, but it's reality.
No, but it's reality. That's right.
More people are just dropping dead for some reason all of a sudden.
Yeah. That new sudden death syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not very fun.
The climate.
That's right. I'm going to pass.
Yeah. So definitely, you're putting this back at the top of my agenda. When we started this company I'm in here, this came up a lot, and we had to structure the company in ways where, because there's a partnership to make sure that if one of us were to drop dead, get hit by a bus, whatever you want to call it, that the other partners could move the business forward. And there was a lot of that, but I never took it to the next step beyond very informal will and that kind of thing. So I need to do
Maybe you should.
Yeah.
Well, and when you come to informal will, just be sure, and this is what I tell people: listen, you can do an informal will, and you're going to do that, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again as your life changes. Go get an estate attorney who does it once, and get your financial directives, your healthcare directives, your stuff like that. So just kind of map it out and do it correctly the first time. Then if you want to change it, people think, "Oh man, I got to go back through this again." You don't. You can do a codicil. It's called a codicil, and you can handwrite something on the back of your will. You can staple it, and it counts. It's legally binding. So you don't have to go through this massive expense over and over and over. What most people our age, whenever we first did our will, me included, my parents were maybe the trustees or the people who did the will, who executed the will for me. Well, now I have a 23-year-old daughter. I have a 19-year-old son. Now that's what happens to most of us at this age. I need to go back and write into the will, or have Anna do it for me. Hey, I'm going to remove my parents. They're now 77, 75. And I'm going to put in my son and daughter to help them do some things. Now, it's what I would counsel everyone to do. Depends on how your kids are. And, if I gave my kids millions of dollars, I don't know how they would handle that. Inside of my last will testament, and just to kind of a view into a planner, I have disbursements going out for college, for cars that I would buy them. Not that they would buy themselves, and it's actually written in there. That's a Ford, Chevy, Honda, not a Lamborghini or Porsche. So, but then there's a third of disbursement at age 35. There's another third of disbursement at age 40, and then final disbursement at age 50. And I kind of do that over time, not to control them from the grave, but to, hey, 35, you're probably buying a house or starting a family. Here's an injection of cash. Then 40, then 50. Here's something to help for retirement from dad, and kind of helping them along. That's kind of some counsel I give people whenever we sit down and do those things, is take it from someone who's done a lot of them. There's ways to destroy your family even doing that, and there's ways to really bless them.
No, I think that's solid advice. Yeah.
We
Not too many people can become a millionaire overnight.
That's right.
And do make the right decisions. Yeah. It's a lot of
always here to help.
Personal power.
And Mark, if
That's
anyone
awesome,
listening today or in the future, and most views of Refresh Fridays actually happen the week after the show's live. So how could they get a hold of you if they wish to hire you?
Yeah, no, the simplest way is just a text, phone call, text. I answer all the phone calls now. It's 205-965-3437. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or you can always email me at my name, mark.burkholder@peachtreeplanning.com.
Yeah, and I was on the website earlier. That's peachtreeplanning.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course,
we'll stick a recording of this.
If anyone missed this, just go on the Dealer Refresh forums. You can post in there as well, and Jeff or I will make sure Mark is aware that you're looking for him. And
sounds good, man. Jeff and Alex, I really appreciate your time.
We appreciate you taking a break from the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife's out there now, so we're going to go back in.
Good.
All right, man. Go enjoy.
Here, I'm a guy with not a lot of money. It disappeared.
Oh,
I said I got some money savings. Would I consider doing also what kind of? You know what Chris, an easy answer to this is whenever you go to a doctor and you go into that doctor and you say, listen, I don't feel good. Give me a shot in the ass. The doctor typically says, can I take an examination first and let me figure out what's wrong with you? That's exactly what I do. There is no cost, none. I sit down with you for about 30 to 45 minutes. I do what I call just an analysis. I ask you a bunch of questions that you have on the top of your mind. You will not have to dig out a single piece of paper. How much do you owe on your house? What do you owe here? What's how much is this worth? What's your partnerships? Are you an S corp, LLC? How are you structured? C corp? And we look at all that stuff. Let me do an analysis like that. I may ask you, hey, do you have a personal financial statement you can send me to validate what you just told me? Then I come back to you in 7 to 10 days and go, hey, here's some thoughts. Here's kind of a path you can run on. Here's another path you can run on. Which one do you like best? Which one fits your personality? And then from that point forward, I really let you drive the train. I view myself as an educator. At that point, going, okay, I don't care what decision you make. Any financial decision has a high and a low. So I'll say, okay, Chris, if you want to go this way, here's the benefit, but here's the downside. Are you okay with that? And we kind of walk through these steps together. It's very easy. It's very stress-free, to be honest with you. And I just ask you, hey, would you like to get hooked into an attorney? Do you have an automobile CPA? If you don't, you should. Do you want to be introduced to one? I got 10 of them. Interview them. See who fits your personality. We just kind of go through that, and we're knocking out a bunch of stuff when it seems like we're really just kind of taking our time, but we're actually getting a lot accomplished.
And Chris, I can tell you, I went through a light version, I think, of what Mark's talking about a few years back. And this is being more so of working in a tech company, and before that, a dealership. And I was surprised at what was there I had forgotten about or didn't realize that was something that counted.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
So good stuff.
Well, Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you even just inviting me on. It's quite an honor.
I think it's a pretty important topic. So thanks
Yeah,
for
it's
helping
something that
people.
you don't think about and overlook. And like you said, it's, no one wants to think about. It's sort of a downer to talk about, but
Yeah,
you got that ripple effect. So do you want to take care of it now or put people through pain and misery down the road?
absolutely.
Cool.
All
All right,
well, on
Mark.
that
Thanks so
happy
much,
note,
man. Yep. All right. Enjoy the
All right,
beach.
guys.
Friday.
Hopefully, I'll meet you guys in person sometime. One of these shows you guys will be at. I'd love to put my hand in yours and say hello to you.
For sure.
Will do, man. For
All
sure.
right, Mark. Thanks again.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
See ya.